perfectly in sync,
I was
perfectly
ready.
timed. You were ready. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 279. Exciting what?
I don't know. I'm
the
getting
ads that are
really
playing before the
strange
show we have no
ads.
control over, but what is it? Just some dude in plaid getting slimed?
I guess so.
Cool.
I don't know what's going
Glad
on.
that those are the ads that are playing before the show. Welcome, everyone, to episode number 279. Our guest tonight, very excited about. This guy has been doing a lot this year. I think we've had guests on the show that were like, wow, I can't believe you've accomplished all this. You ran this race and you ran this race. But Shawn Nakamura is going to be joining us on the show to talk about the Great 8, which is the first 100-mile races. He ran all 8 of them this year. It's called the Great 8. He is the 4th human to do so. Like, things like this just... It's pretty amazing that things like this can still happen, but he is literally the 4th person to do this.
It's so crazy.
The Great 8 are the original 100-mile races, includes like Wasatch, Old Dominion, Western States, Angeles Crest. The list goes on. We're going to talk about it in tonight's show. In addition to the fact that Shawn is on day 3,223 of his run streak, nearly 10 years of running every day. So
That's nuts.
That's nuts. Our guest tonight is legit, and I'm really excited to welcome him to the show.
I didn't even run every day this week, and it's Monday.
We're going to talk to Shawn about how we can maybe give ourselves 3,000 days to run. We're going to learn a lot from this guy. I guarantee it. So sit back, relax. Welcome to Ginger Runner Live. The show begins now.
Ginger Runner.
Yay! Wow, we are good today.
I even did a hand motion today.
I didn't catch it until the last possible moment. Our podcast listeners are going to be cool. Sounded like good hand motions. Welcome, everyone, to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 279. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy Mondays to spend a little bit of it with us.
Mm-hmm.
Tonight, we got a very exciting show because I feel like it's going to be one of those shows that we learn a lot from. I mentioned that in the pre-show there. But I'm serious because our guest tonight, Shawn Nakamura, has run, get this, the Great 8, which are the first 8 100-mile races to have been created this year alone. So he is the 4th human to do this in a year, the Great 8, run all 8 of these 100-mile races. And he wasn't done. I just want to also point out that he actually ran the Great 10. I've created it just now. Because he also ran UTMB and Tahoe 200. So he did some extra credit in there.
And it's also only the 10th month of the year.
That is a valid point. Very valid. We're going to talk to Shawn about how he trained and how he got his body prepared to run the Great 8. And I'll say it now. Old Dominion 100, Mohican Trail 100, Western States 100, Vermont 100, Angeles Crest 100, Leadville 100, Wasatch Front 100, and finally, this last weekend, he just completed it, the Arkansas Traveler 100. So that's 8 100-mile races. Then you just throw in UTMB. You throw in Tahoe 200 because why do 100 miles on Tahoe? Do an extra 100 in there, too. Our guest tonight, Shawn Nakamura, is going to talk to us all about being the 4th human to run the Great 8, and he is on day 3,223 of his run streak. So he's been running every day for nearly 10 years. We have a lot to learn from this guy, and I can't wait to introduce him to all of you. But before we do, I'm not the only person here in studio talking to you with my voice. There's another person. Hi.
Hi. What's up, everyone? Kim Tashima Newberry here. If you're new to the live show, welcome. We will have our wonderful guest, Shawn, joining us in a minute here. And because we are live and we do have a wonderful chat room going, feel free to pop in, say hi. And if you have questions for our guest, Shawn, you can ask them in the chat room.
Sweet. We have some individuals that we like to thank at the top of every Ginger Runner Live. It is because of them that we're able to do this show here from a tiny corner in a tiny room. It is because of them that we're able to do this full time. And those are our Patreon subscribers. If you go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner, you can see and become a member of the GR crew for as little as $1 a month. Everything helps support this channel, and it is because of our Patreon subscribers. So thank you so much, everyone who has jumped onto our Patreon bandwagon and become a member of the crew. We cannot do this without you. 3 members in particular at that top tier help just make everything happen. And those 3 individuals we like to talk about during every Ginger Runner Live. Chris Lee out of Hong Kong. Chris has an organization called Trailblazer that showcases the trails in the Hong Kong area. He's become a great friend. I know that Hong Kong's going through a bunch of stuff right now, and Chris is good. His family is good. He's reached out a number of times, but he just does great things for the trail running community there. So we'd like to show him love at the top of every show. Rick Bjarnason and his team at cheekymonkeymedia.ca. They are a web design company out of British Columbia. They deal with clients all across the globe. Big, small, doesn't matter. They redid my website, gingerrunner.com, and they did a fantastic job. Rick himself is an ultra runner, ran Sinister 7 this year. He ran Tiger Claw earlier this year and called it easy. We'll get him back next year, trust me. But Rick and his team are just fantastic, so big shout out to them. And finally, Brian Sands, longtime supporter, longtime viewer. He's probably in the chat room tonight. I see him there. Big shout out to that man because he is inspiring hundreds, if not thousands, of people around the globe to run. He ran his first marathon a couple years back. He ran his first 50K last year. He's training right now for his first 100K coming up at the end of this month. We will be there to support members of the Ginger Runner community, Brian included. So it's going to be an exciting journey to follow along. And he's just been inspiring so many people. He doesn't even know it. So big shout out to those 3 individuals at the top tier Patreon. We could not do this without them. Without further ado, our guest tonight is Shawn Nakamura, coming to us live from what I thought was a fire station, because I thought he was a fireman. Turns out that's not the case. He is in tech, but he puts out fires. I learned my lesson. It was like, I hope a call doesn't come through. And he's like, no, what are you talking about? So I'm excited to welcome him to the show because this is long overdue. This guy has been running endurance events and ultra events for a very long time. He is the 4th human to complete the Great 8, which I just mentioned here earlier in the show. Without further ado, Shawn Nakamura. Yeah!
Yay.
Thank you guys for having me.
Of course, man.
Long-time listener, first-time caller, right?
One thing I've loved is over the last few weeks, your Instagram stories, like you'll show Ginger Runner live, like you're watching the episode live, but from a treadmill. So you're getting in your daily miles while enjoying the show and stuff like that. Do you do a lot of treadmill miles in your home, or are you like outdoor all the time, every time I can do it?
Yeah, originally I would probably say that I would never really go on a treadmill unless I really, really had to. And this year with the Great 8, I mean, I was using the treadmill quite a bit. It was one of the better things that we purchased last year. It's an incline trainer, so it actually can go like 40% incline, and you can get some crazy steep climbing done on there. It's pretty rad. The convenience factor of having something like that in your house is amazing. So I throw on YouTube, I throw on like all the Ginger Runner shows, episodes, just whatever the favorite thing of like them looking at that time, and get some miles knocked out. So
it seems like it's kind of the perfect setup. I think I'm familiar with the trainer you're talking about. Is a Nordic Track incline trainer?
Yeah, exactly.
We gave one away last year for Ginger Miss, and the year before that. Hopefully this year we'll give one away. But like every time we see an advertisement for it, we're kind of go, I wish we had the room. We don't have the room, but it looks like the perfect sort of indoor. But it seems like the perfect device to have indoor to get the mountain legs going. Especially if you have a time restraints or family, or you can't always make it out to the mountains because of work or something, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to start with talking about your run streak. So we've had guests on this show before who have really impressive run streaks, and it's maybe not a part of their like story. It's part of their lives. Every day they get up and they run miles, but their stories are elsewhere. But for you, I feel like a part of your story is the fact that you've been running for 3,223 days in a row. How? Like a part of me's like, how and why? I want to be more specific than that. So when did this start? And when did you know that this was going to be something you were going to be doing for a long time?
So I started basically from couch to running a couple of miles. And my goal essentially was to set up a habit, like make a habit, a positive habit. And I was going basically from a situation where I wasn't doing any cardio. I was doing, more weightlifting type stuff, and I really wanted to feel lighter and more energetic. And the idea popped in my head that, runners are pretty high energy, so let's try to emulate that. And I literally couldn't go a mile without stopping when I started, and it took me like a couple weeks to build up like a mile or two. And from there, I thought to myself, well, I can make it stick. I can make a habit if I do it enough times in a row. And that's basically how the streak started. I failed at that. My goal was 30 days. I failed to get to 30 days. I did 21. My body freaked out and it was like, what are you doing? And I got sick, just like a cold or something like that. And then once I felt better, like 2 weeks later, I started again. Said, well, if I made it 21 days, I can go 30. And once I hit 30, I was like, well, wait a second. Maybe I can do 60. And then once I hit 100 days, then somebody, one of my friends, I think at work, had mentioned, well, you should probably just go for the whole year, shouldn't you? And they did a little inception on me. They kind of planted that idea in my head. So I'm like, oh, okay, a year. I guess I could keep this going. So one thing led to the next, and I think it's a fairly common trajectory, at least in terms of race distance for folks. And for me, it was like an added challenge just to keep this momentum going. The way that I decided on the distance was I wanted it to be something that was a habit that anyone could do, and so I didn't want to have any excuses. Everybody has 15 or 20 minutes every day that could be their time, and for me that was a simple enough goal. No other rules, just get a couple miles done. And that's how it all started.
So that's kind of what was going to be my next question is what are the Shawn Nakamura rules to your run streak? Because some people are like, you got to hit a mile a day or you got to hit 20 to 30 minutes. Do you have specific rules, and have you come close to not obeying all of them?
For sure.
Nearly 10 years is a long time.
I have hours of stories just on making those runs happen. But without going too crazy into the weeds, I set it as 2 miles because at the time when I was starting, again, it was couched to probably maybe 1 to 2 months of running, and then finally started this 30-day attempt. And I figured I could do 2 miles. It was difficult enough to feel like a challenge at the time, but it wasn't so crazy that I would make an excuse like, oh, I don't have time to do that. And then, essentially my rule is simple. It's just 2 miles. It's a distance rule. I can take as long as I need to. It has to just be a run. So 1 foot on the ground at any given time. And the first 7 or 8 years, I didn't really use a treadmill, maybe a dozen times at most. Usually that was because I was traveling in a hotel area where there wasn't easy access to somewhere to run. And then this last year with all these races, I've done so many recovery runs that the convenience of being able to just roll out of bed and do a quick or slow run, a lot of slow runs right before work, it has been really, really amazing for the recovery process. So, that's essentially how things got started. That's the only rule. It's just distance. And in terms of missing, so I can tell you my most difficult, most challenging run ever was probably in the first couple of years where I had just a terrible stomach. I don't know what kind of a issue, but it was related to food that I ate. And I was like locked in the bathroom, like literally sitting next to the porcelain throne there. And I don't know how I got out and able to get outside for a run, but most painful and most difficult was definitely that day. I've had a few others like that, but thankfully have been able to push through. The other challenges have just been, after some big races. That's probably one that people might have questions about. So, for example, like after Tahoe 200, I had hurt my knee a little bit during the race, and just all the muscles had tightened up. And it's just about taking that first step. Just deciding to go out. It's going to be slow and painful. Sometimes, you're fighting that urge to just not go out and get it done. But it's just once you get into the flow of things, you push through. It's again only 2 miles. I usually do just like a little bit more than that, but those have been challenging. But I would say that I've done some other like little tricks to help with recovery. So every once in a while, I'll do a run like at like maybe 11:30 at night, and then bookend it. I'll take a little break, do a couple miles, and then maybe 12:15 a.m. I'll do another run, and that gives me maybe an extra 12 to 24 hours. So there's little tricks like that. Definitely some challenges with travel. Like if we travel overseas,
Yeah.
I've run my streak runs in airports. I would say that Atlanta comes to mind. It's a really big airport, maybe one of the busiest in the world.
I think we've run 10 miles in that airport before.
Just trying to catch a flight.
Accidentally.
Yeah.
They have this really long stretch where you can take a train to get from one particular area to another. And part of it's air conditioned. And I don't know if you've been to that area, but it's really humid. So actually it was kind of nice to I've done like jeans runs through there to get my run streak done. People kind of looking around like, what is he doing? But, you knock it out when you have to.
I already know we have tons of live questions already about this. And I know that we could do a full show on this. I also want to just kind of touch on the fact that there are no run streak police. There's no one that's going to dictate, this is essentially self-imposed behavior, right? Like you sticking to your streak is 100% willpower in your own mind. And I want to make sure that gets carried over to the next conversation regarding the grade 8 and stuff like that, because I think you've either taught yourself or you've had this behavior and you're now utilizing it. But the stick-to-itiveness is insanely admirable to be able to pick something, love it, and stick with it. And everything that you have on your resume now, from 3,223 days of a run streak to the grade 8, and plus all the other hundreds and 200s that you've done over the last few years and beyond, your ability to get these things done is it's amazing. And what I hope we can pull from some of this show is to teach some of our viewers, or maybe some of our viewers can pick up some of these tips so they themselves can implement some of this stuff into their own routine and maybe get themselves on a run streak or challenging goals that maybe are outside the wheelhouse right now. So before we move on, of course, live questions. Kim's already pulled a bunch aside, so let's get to some of those.
Yeah, I first want to just shout out, there's a couple people in this chat room, people that have brand new run streaks anywhere from like 3 days. So they're just starting their run streaks. And then Shaggy Runner in the chat room says, almost on a 2-year run streak for me, which is really cool to see that some of you guys out there are kind of doing your own thing as well. And I'm curious, how are you keeping track of your run streaks? I'm imagining like this big, like old school chart with those tiny little star stickers.
Yeah, because 10 years
ago,
so
rewarding to me, just like to peel a little gold star sticker. Stick it.
Yeah, how do you keep track of it?
I think I need to get some stickers now. But it's true. The first year or two, maybe 3, I would keep track on a calendar and write down like the distance. So I have these calendars that I had written on. Maybe the only writing I do like the whole year, physically writing anything. It's very kind of funny to think about. But about maybe 2 or 3 months in, I started using an app, and it's called Run Meter, I think. And I was using that for a really long time. And eventually I started to use, all different types of devices. So different versions of Garmin, syncing to different types of things. And then there's obviously Strava. So right now I have probably about 6 or 7 years, maybe more, on the Run Meter. And then I have a lot of Garmin related runs. And then I even have like photos of treadmill screens that I've had to take when I don't have anything else to keep track of. And it's just like, okay, that's the treadmill. I'm taking a photo. Maybe one day when I have some time, I'll input them all and update one of the platforms. I have made promises to actually input it all into one spot. So I have to make good on that at some point here. But you're right about your question earlier about the the enforcement of run streaks and that kind of concept. Very much a self-policing activity. I didn't even realize that run streaking was a thing until I finished a full year of running every day. And someone was like, "Oh, you should check and see if that's something other people even do." It didn't even occur to me that someone else would be running every day for that long. And once you dig into it, there's a couple hundred people around the world with longer run streaks than I have that are actually known about. So and they go all the way up to 45 years or something
Wow.
bonkers. So anyways, I just thought I'd mention that because it really blew my mind when I found that out.
Yeah, like I said, we've had guests that have had run streaks and stuff like that. And I'm being corrected in the chat room too. I said that there's no run streak police, but supposedly there are. And now I'm realizing that, of course, because the internet and because this has been going on long before I know long before I was born, run streaking, and people have been doing this for a long time. There are unofficial governing bodies, I'm sure, like internet forums and things like that, where there are people who keep track of other run streakers. And like you said, there's only 100 or so people that have done more than you. But I imagine that there is a strict group of people that are like, if you're going to join this elusive club of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you got to have some form of proof. So I am corrected here live on the show that there are definitely people out there keeping track of Shawn Nakamura's every move. I'm actually really curious. Is there something that you have learned over this period of nearly 10 years that you can impart upon our viewing and listening audience in regards to sticking to something like this? Because I know when you're running an ultra, you're running 100 miles, you're doing it 8 times in a year, there's going to be days that you just don't want to go run another 20 to 30 minutes because you're wrecked. Your legs are sore. Your body is spent. Maybe you've been puking for 24 hours or something. You can't get food in. Where is that mindset? Where is that place that you go to that gets you onto the treadmill or into the running shoes and out the door?
I would say the most powerful influence, one of the first things I would recommend people do is just tell everybody they care about in their circle, outside their circle, tell them that you're trying to do this, and basically generate social enforcement right away, because immediately you have now not just yourself to let down potentially, and you have this huge community of folks who are supporting you and encouraging you. And so having that, I think, is really critical. Same thing with a big goal race. I think it really helps to kind of throw it out there and let people, encourage you and keep you kind of on point along the way. I think that's definitely one thing that I recommend for everybody. And then I also say just keep it simple. Like, don't attach tons of rules to whatever your streak is defined as. A lot of people, the sort of traditional worldwide view is this 1 mile distance. Even though the world is metric, but that's basically what they've agreed upon, and that's so that's you can use a treadmill, but you can't run underwater, or there's all these like little things you were talking about earlier.
Right.
I have looked at it to some degree, just to make sure I'm following whatever that is, but I would say that's first and foremost, and then I would recommend doing your run or doing whatever you're trying to streak. It doesn't have to be running. It could be a bike ride. It could be eating a certain type of food, which I've tried before as well.
It's funny. There's a Chipotle and a Cadobe conversation in the chat room for people who were on streaks of eating that. So, yeah, yes. Food works too.
Yeah, I did a salad streak for a year, which is a whole nother conversation, but that helps with running for sure. But I would also just try to do it earlier in the day. Like, just make it your first thing. Like you're brushing your teeth, or taking a shower. Just try to knock it out first thing and get yourself out the door or onto the treadmill or whatever you need to do. As the day goes on, you have fewer hours left in the day to finish your run or whatever again you're trying to do to streak, and you're just continuously limiting the window of time which to complete it. So and that's coming from a place of having run a ton of my runs at night after work, after long days of work at 10, 11 p.m. firefighting, like you mentioned earlier, issues, and having to run at 10, 11:30 at night and just barely squeaking one in. So earlier, I'd say is better. You could draw on all of the other runs you've done for strength, all the other races you've finished, all of the other difficult things you've faced in your life, really. And, I think, because one of the other areas that's very challenging with a streak in particular is this idea of, you hurt yourself. Like, what do you do when you hurt yourself, or you quote unquote injure yourself? Yeah. And honestly, those have also been some of the most difficult runs for me, and beyond the porcelain throne. Everyone's scale is a little bit different in terms of pain tolerance. And a lot of that I think is beyond physical. I think to your point, I think it's you're sort of choosing to ride that line, that red line of which is danger and which is opportunity, and you have to kind of turn your brain onto opportunity and see it that way. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to condone running injured. But there's definitely situations where you have to listen to your body and you run a lot easier than you might want to. I think that's actually a good tip as well. So making sure that you take your effort, your perceived level of effort seriously if you're trying to run every day, and you're limiting yourself in terms of your workout output. You're not trying to run, really difficult sprint track work every day, back to back to back to back. I think a lot of folks will run into issues if they're trying to maintain something like that. And incorporate, an easy way to do things. If you already run 5 days a week or 4 or 5 days a week, you can throw 2 or 3, very easy runs, and treat them like recovery runs, and just treat them like a rest day, basically. Your legs will still be moving. You'll get the blood flow benefits. And you can keep your streak going, but you don't have to put out a ton. I think that's another thing that I would suggest people try.
Do you include walking? Like, does walking count?
No, it's got to be a run for me. Run. Yeah. That could be a different way to do it though, if you're trying, especially if you're just starting off with running and maybe you're doing a run walk training for marathon or something like that.
Sure.
That could be a nice way to incorporate, a level of effort that will still give you, some benefits as you're moving through your training.
I love just the idea of, while they are essentially self-imposed rules and you're basically creating your own guidelines to fulfill, whether it's 10 minutes of running or 20 minutes of running or 2 miles or whatever. I love the idea that it can really be up to that person. And I'm assuming it can change and evolve. And I'm assuming maybe your rules have evolved over time. Maybe it has gone from like a mile to 2. And I think it's such a really unique way to challenge people, or they can challenge themselves. And there's really no race results out there. There's no one that's going to be like telling them that they're bad because they didn't do it or that sort of thing. It's like, it's all self-imposed. I really love that. I love that idea. I want to get to one more live question before we actually start talking about the grade 8, because this is I'm super fascinated about this, with this run. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a number of questions asking about how do you stay injury free, and I think this kind of ties into going into the grade 8 conversation of
Sure.
like, are you doing anything special for recovery to keep the streak going?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the most underappreciated element of any kind of recovery is just the amount of sleep you're getting. So nothing groundbreaking there, but really treating sleep as a critical part of your rest and recovery process. I do think it's a really good idea to do easy runs after a big effort. And so that's definitely something that I do. I would probably say that out of I think I did 10, 11, maybe 12 races throughout this sort of summer of hundreds. And I mean, those might have been those were probably my biggest efforts. But in terms of in training and racing in between, there was very little of that. It was a lot of just very easy, mellow runs, slowly gaining speed back, getting the leg turnover back. And so first and foremost, I'd say rest, making sure you get really good sleep. There's so many apps now that can keep track of this, or at least try to keep a decent check on how you're doing for your sleep. And and then obviously, like, you're just controlling your effort afterwards and making sure that you listen and your body's saying, hey, you should go easy today, and then probably the next day and probably the day after that. And so it really kind of just depends, especially if you're leaving yourself only, a handful of days between hundreds. I mean, you're just trying to get yourself to the starting line. You're just trying to get your legs to even do a 12-minute mile, or just so. So thinking about that, I would say your buildup should be long and gradual. So another thing, heading into any kind of like large effort, definitely think about the long game. Don't try to like, I don't know, say like hack your 100-mile, your epic summer of hundreds. you want to put in a good gradual buildup. Make sure all your different systems of your body can build up. Like 'cause they all sort of work at different levels, and they improve at different speeds. And all those systems need to be firing on all cylinders when you're trying to conquer these larger distances. So I think those would be a couple of like things when you're starting off. And then for me, like I was really thinking about the buildup of the first handful of hundreds are going to be training for the rest of the summer. And I know I'm going to be, pretty tired later on in the summer, but
Right.
I knew I was going to use Old Dominion and Mohican to help build up for Western. And so my effort levels there were going to be, set up to match, trying to do maybe a little faster effort or harder effort at Western. And then I knew Vermont would be a little bit of a reprieve because I'd have a 3-week instead of a 2-week gap between the races.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of knowing like in advance where you're going to try to recover a little bit. So I would speak to planning, I guess. In terms of like nutrition and a lot of those types of things, I think, eating healthy is obviously something that, you should be trying to do all the time, but especially when you're going through recovery, your body's going to want all kinds of stuff, want all the sugar and all the fries and burgers and all the good stuff, but trying to just be mindful of all of those things. So I mean, for me, I eat a lot of like vegetable type meals, vegetable based meals. So I think a lot of that definitely has helped reduce the burden of digestion even over time. Just like one less thing for my body to have to worry about and process
Right.
while it's trying to heal the muscles. It's trying to heal these other systems. So trying to reduce how the digestive system is taxed. There's a lot of foods with like say dairies and meats and things that are highly acidic. They take a little bit more energy to actually break down and utilize. And so I think in many cases that definitely helps, especially later in the day. So heading into a sleep, if you're not digesting as much, you're going to sleep a little bit more soundly, a little bit longer, potentially deeper. And your body, especially another thing is not eating so late. So trying to reduce the amount of time, or trying to increase the amount of time between eating, like say a dinner meal and actually going to sleep.
Right.
Like, again, it just speaks to like your body has only so much resource, so many resources. So if you can redirect some of them to the areas that really need it the most, I think that's definitely a strategy that can be used.
Minimizing risk. I mean, essentially minimizing the problems or potential problems in the flow of things.
Yeah, highly preventative, as well as I think just trying to think about like you have finite resources in your body and you want to allocate them in the areas where you need them the most.
Right.
In terms of like muscle recovery and like maybe say like massage and those types of things, I really didn't do a whole lot in that area that until about a couple weeks ago after Tahoe, when I definitely had like some seriously tight muscles, quads, hamstrings, my shin was all messed up. The every part of the leg was pretty much so tight that the hinge on the knee just wouldn't like hinge properly. So I did reach out and got a few sessions of PT massage, and I think that that's probably something that I should have done a little bit more of earlier in the summer, I should say. And I would say that I'd recommend that folks maybe don't think about that as a luxury so much, because it's often branded that way, or it's sort of communicated as this luxury thing. But in reality, if you're running 100 miles, you're an athlete. You're running 50 miles, you're an athlete. You're running a marathon. You may not be a professional athlete. Most of us have day jobs and everything, but your body doesn't know that. Your body's like, hey, you just put me through 50 miles or 100 miles. And for us to think about it in a sort of different light and make sure that we take the time to get those they're really resources, take advantage of them and find somebody who can help you work through some of those issues. So I definitely have embraced that in the last month. That's definitely helped a lot.
We were even just talking about that as far as like after long runs, especially long efforts that we've had in the last few months, it's like you got to realize that a massage therapist isn't a luxury as much as it is PT. Like, we're putting ourselves through, my body is not an elite athlete's body. I didn't start training when I was in junior high school and continue that high level of training my entire life. And I'm just used to the pain and that sort of thing. I'm a regular person doing kind of irregular things. So why not get the same treatments that elite athletes get, because our bodies still suffer the same consequences, you know? We were just talking about that. I'm like, really could use a massage. We want to start talking about the grade 8, because this accomplishment is rare. You are the very rare. You are the fourth person to accomplish this. Again, the grade 8 is the first 100-mile races, the first one being Western States in 1977. Old Dominion was 79. Wasatch Front was 80. Leadville was 83. Angeles Crest in 86. Vermont in 89. Mohican in 1990. And Arkansas in 1991. So these races have been around for a long time. But there's only been 4 people to have done all 8. And the last person, you were telling me, the last person to have done this was 19 years ago?
Yeah, 2 people had finished this back in 2000, and that was kind of a magic number for a millennium. So I can see someone going for broke and trying something like this. And there are a couple badass runners. I never got a chance to run with either of them. This was before I was a runner, but Monica Schultz from Canada and Hans Dieter from Germany. And these were just some badass runners. And it's really neat because when I started down this path of, hey, I got into Western States, maybe I should try to do the Grand Slam. And I had heard about the Last Great Race because a couple of my friends in Southern California had run that, that's the 6 original hundreds. I just thought, well, I wonder, if anyone's done more than that. And that's just the curiosity of my mind, I guess. And then I researched and found these 3 people. There was also Gary Wright back in 1992. He was the very first person to do this, but and it inspired me. I thought, wow, it is doable. It's within reach. There's just all this red tape of logistical barriers just to get entry into races.
That was exactly where we were going to start. And I think Kim actually has a question pulled aside for that. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a couple people that asked, but Deb in the chat room asked, Shawn, did you have special consideration getting into all the lottery races, for example, Western States, to actually go for the grade 8?
No. So this wasn't even on my radar, to be honest, until I got into Western States. I tried for 5 years, which is probably about average nowadays for everybody to get into the race. And then I also had been trying to get into Leadville for 5 years. And when both of those landed, I thought,
coincidentally, right?
Yeah, there's no special treatment or preference for either of those. And, Jenny, my wife, we were chatting about it, and she knew that at some point, if I got in, I would go for the Grand Slam. And of course, me, sort of being the way I am, I guess, I was like, well, I might as well try to get into the Last Great Race, which would require 5 lotteries of the 6. And one after the next, I was able to get through. So I got through Angeles Crest, and that lottery is a brand new lottery, actually. That one hasn't been a lottery for that long.
Right.
And that was the only race of the grade 8 I'd actually run before. So that was the next one. And then I had the Vermont 100 lottery. Got through that one, and Wasatch, which you have to do for both the Grand Slam and also for the Last Great Race. So 5 lotteries of the 6. Old Dominion is a little bit of a smaller race, but it is the second oldest 100. That one was not a lottery. And then thankfully Mohican and Arkansas were also not. So I just jumped into those as soon as I was able to figure that part out.
I'm like blown away, because it's the accomplishment. Listen, the accomplishment is insane. It's amazing to be able to have run these 800 milers this year. But I'm almost wanting to give you more credit for getting into the 8 races, because states alone, obviously, we all know the percentages of states. We talk about it every year. We go into this race going, who's going to be drawn? It could be any number of these thousands of people that apply for the coveted few hundred slots. But then on top of that, Angeles Crest, Leadville now as well. Wasatch, I know, is really difficult, and Vermont is difficult. I'm just like, Shawn, the dice were rolling in your favor
It was
this year.
the stars were aligned for this one. I had no excuse. I had to go for this.
Was there a point when you were like, oh shit, like things are actually aligning? Was there ever a point of doubt or dread as these races are starting to fall into place? Or was it all just like, oh my God, this is great? Like, how was that playing out?
Definitely started off as this is great, and it was very exciting. As we got deeper into this project, this slam, if you will, it definitely got very challenging, not just physically or sort of mentally, but I think emotionally as well. And my wife Jenny, is basically my partner in this project, and logistically, we talk about just getting into the races, just the logistic of signing up for everything, and even trying to get into lotteries for years, and then all of those things aligning. Logistically, you're starting to think about, now, how am I going to get to these places?
Yeah.
I mean, worrying about the entry fees, that's obviously a huge one, but like, okay, now we got to fly to this city or drive to this location or a new state we've never been to, and we have to figure out, how to get a place to sleep, and it really becomes quite an effort, and you haven't even started to actually run anything, because this is months and months before you even toe the line at
planning, right?
First one. So anyone who's planned out a busy schedule knows that's definitely a huge component. And luckily, Jenny, she's an expert in the travel world. She does a lot of this type of stuff for her job, and that was huge. So another star aligned there for us. And but the odds of getting into all those lotteries in one year, I can't think of calculating that. My head would explode.
Part of me thinks that one of our live viewers has to be a statistics expert, or someone that can actually calculate the percentage of getting into these 8 races. Because now I'm really curious, because it's not just 1 in 3,500 like for states or whatever. It's like the odds were not in your favor, Shawn.
John in the chat room says, considering his luck, is Shawn considering buying Powerball tickets?
How many lottery tickets have you purchased, and how many are in our name?
We definitely, yes, all of them for sure. We definitely bought some tickets after, I think, the Leadville lottery. I'm pretty sure that happened. We were thinking the same thing. So I don't know. I mean, you wait for it, you do the work, you get your qualifiers, and you cross your fingers, you high five everyone you can, you try to put good juju out there, and sometimes your name's pulled. I don't know. It's definitely very grateful for the opportunity.
No doubt.
So I think also because of that, it definitely inspired me. I know that it's I don't know if anyone's going to get a chance to do this again. So I had better step to the line and really give it my everything. I owe that.
Absolute. Yeah, I mean, thinking about that perspective is true to this task, because there may not be another human that can even get into all of these races in the same year, and that I can only imagine that was an additional element of fuel for your fire, because you could be one of the last humans to get this privilege, and it's such a cool thing, that a unique thing that probably very few runners will ever encounter at mile 70 or 80 of a run, going, I gotta finish this because I might be the last person to get to do this. Like, it's such a cool thing to draw from.
It was very powerful. This last race at Arkansas, I was really nervous. Like I've run quite a few races before, and getting close to 100 ultras, and I was pretty nervous, especially coming off a little bit of a knee issue that I was working through. But I was going to do everything I could, to make it happen. So it wasn't pretty, but my running at the race, that is, but was able to manage to get through it. So grateful for that, for sure.
No doubt. I want to get to maybe one live question, and I'm going to start talking about what it took to get it done.
Yeah, and question from Kevin in the chat room. Kevin says, of the Great 8, which challenged you the most by ways of cutoff or terrain type, altitude, etc.?
Yeah, for sure. Two things. Leadville's cutoffs, coupled with,
That was
I
the
could talk
politest
about,
laugh ever.
I could talk about how rough I think their cutoff system is, and I might as well do it because I don't know if we'll ever go back there. Shout out to all the volunteers and everybody out there at Leadville. It's a really neat environment. It's the biggest 100-miler in the U.S. In terms of number of participants. Their cutoffs are very extreme, in particular for people coming from lower elevation, lower altitude. So I train at 500 feet above sea level or something like that, or maybe even less than that for the majority of the year. Certainly, if you live in Colorado, you're probably fine with the altitude, but I think the altitude plus the cutoffs being so aggressive was really rough. I actually wasn't even thinking about cutoffs when I was running that race, and I got to the turnaround. No one said anything. It wasn't really a topic yet of. And then I went up Hope Pass the second time, which is a nightmare. It's also, so there's a couple things. One is, even if you have the legs to continue and like make up time, there's no way to pass anybody. You might have a stretch of 20, 30, 50 people. And if you're ready to bomb some downhills, you're not going to pass 50 people on single track. It'd be rude and it would be dangerous and it just doesn't make sense. But because the cutoffs are so tight, if that's your strategy to kind of go easier and then try to make up time later, you don't want to do that out there. It'd be extremely, extremely risky. But so I rolled into, I don't know if it was 67, 63, somewhere around 2/3 of the way through the race. And Jenny comes up running at me. I have a pacer with me too, by the way, who was doing an amazing job just kind of keeping me going. But Jenny comes through and she's like, "You got 15 minutes to get through the aid station." I'm like, what? What are you talking? I'm ready to like take my shoes off because we just went through a water crossing, like freezing cold water 5 times. And I was ready to take off my shoes, throw some dry, socks on. And
do
everything.
a typical swap at mile 67 of an ultra.
I was totally all about that. I've been thinking about it for like, an hour, how I'm going to go through this water again. It's going to suck. I'm going to be cold. And then I'm going to change my shoes and it'll be great. And we get through to this aid station and she's frantic. And I'm thinking like, there's cutoffs. I didn't even think about that. And I literally, I got like a kiss. I got like, and then I just ran through. We were just in and out as soon as I ran as fast as I could just to try to get out of there and make up some time. But I was able to bank like 30 minutes through the next section, but still having any kind of lingering cutoff. And I've run towards the front of the pack. I've run at the very back of the pack. I've run in the middle. It's really stressful. Like if you have to think about cutoffs. So part of it, I would say, was altitude at Leadville for me. Part of it was probably very tired legs from Angela's Crest. I put out a little bit bigger effort there. And the other was just the cutoffs were, it's a 30-hour cutoff. There's not a huge amount of combined climbing, but you're at altitude, right? You're at like 10, 11,000 feet the whole time. And then you have a couple tough climbs. You have Hope Pass twice, but really I think they could ease up a little bit, give some folks a little bit more time there, and they'd have a lot more finishers. It was under 50% finish rate there, I think.
Wow.
If they're listening, anyone from Leadville, do everyone a solid and just add a couple hours. I think you'd have some happy people for sure.
That's so interesting. I actually didn't know that about their cutoffs. I haven't heard that yet. We've had some guests on that have run it and we've had guests on that have won it before, and I imagine it's a much different scenario up front. But yeah, I hadn't heard that the cutoffs were super strict. We've run races before where you get to a point and you don't think you're at risk of being cut off, and then you get the word like, okay, you guys have like 20 minutes to get out of this aid station, and it kind of ruins everything because it kind of takes away that like joy because all of a sudden now you're running from sweepers and you're running from people behind you that
Welcome to my world.
well, right, but it's like that's a scary element to throw into a race there almost unnecessarily, especially like you said, people coming from sea level.
Highland Running Club in the chat room says I was at Winfield at the cutoff and it was crazy.
That's a lot of people to tell that you can't continue, right? That's a lot of people to say like, I'm sorry you didn't make the cutoff. You know, you got to pull your bib off now, hand it over.
Hundreds, probably.
Hundreds. That's a lot
a
of
race
transportation issues too. I'm curious, do you have any favorite moments from this? I know this is a lot of suffering. I know that through 100 milers, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. And the lows tend to be really memorable. But are there moments that you're like, I can't believe I caught this moment?
Wow. That's what we do it. That's what we do it for, right? I mean, all those special moments. An unlimited number of moments like that. One of my favorites to point out is definitely finishing Western States with my wife and having banked enough time under my, it was a secondary goal, but it was still a good goal, a sub 24-hour goal. And I was really excited to be able to do that and not be stressed about, say, like a 24-hour cutoff. And then we had plenty of time for the last 6 miles to just enjoy that sort of, it wasn't a victory lap, so to speak, but it was, just a real casual final section in the course, and we got to finish together. And that was amazing. We definitely got a number of moments like that that wouldn't have happened, if we hadn't been going through such a difficult challenge. It wasn't just, I don't want to say another 100, but that just sounds bad. But because of the difficulty of the slam or this collection of races, so I got really lucky also with not just obviously my wife Jenny. She's incredible from a support standpoint, from a crew standpoint, from a pacing standpoint, from a partner in life standpoint, in every possible way you can imagine. And that's been huge for me and for us. I was also very fortunate to have a lot of support from family and friends and the community and folks who would pace me at different races. And I mean, so many amazing people. But one of my friends, my good friend Martin, he also ran the last great race. He did the 6 original hundreds. We were the only two, and I think maybe only a handful of people in the last 12 years have ever done that. 6 originals. He stuck with me this last race. We stuck with each other at Arkansas to get it done and spent maybe 60, 70 miles together, slogging it out. And, just those kinds of bonds, when you're running that many different races, maybe you're not running every mile together, but you're out there going through, a process that only really you can relate with. That was a really special thing for us to share. And actually, the last handful of people who've done the last great race have actually been fortunate enough to have at least one other person attempting it in the same year. Andy Kumeda, I don't know if you know Andy, and he was able to do that. There's Ace and Jonesy. I don't know if you know Chris Jones and Ace Ewing. They did that together. So there's this really kind of neat bonding. And so I just think back on the collection of everything, and I think of like, wow, it's pretty special. From a pacing standpoint, I just had so many amazing pacers, and recently at Wasatch, I had 2 incredible pacers from Utah. Some friends of mine who just, made it fun, went through the lows with me, and through the highs as well. And, it was a really special mix of support this year. And then the community at large, social media community, my work colleagues, like having the flexibility, having first enough vacation time is like one thing, and really stretching it out to make it work, and doing half work days and half travel days, and doing 3-day weekends, quick turnarounds to make that last has been pretty huge. And having that support in my job essentially has been huge. other amazing things. The Vermont 100 had, it's literally the only 100-miler that still runs side by side with horses. So we actually we literally are sharing the same exact course, and you've got people riding their horses, and they're probably looking down at us like, you guys are crazy, and we're looking up like, you guys are crazy. Like, I can't imagine sitting for 20 hours. That was pretty incredible. I really thought there was going to be all kinds of logistical challenges with the ground and what got put onto the ground by the horses.
That was the first thought out of my head.
And it was really not a problem. There was plenty of space for everybody. And despite it being like a 108-degree heat index, it was insane. It was a 44% finish rate. It was crazy. But there was plenty of space for everybody. So that was definitely positive. So I don't want to go veer off too much, but I did have a pretty amazing Mohican experience where literally the first 50 miles were beautiful. Going through the Mohican, the park there is amazing. And then it turned into like flash flood warnings, like the kind where like every news station has like the television the next day is showing like flooded, homes and like just kind of really damaged areas that were affected. Well, during that run through the night, I was going through literally like hours and hours and hours of just relentless downpour. And then the fog came in, and the fog, like you had 5-6 feet of visibility, and you're running along single track along rivers that are just starting to literally like right alongside rivers. And I got the little public broadcasting emergencies interruption thing coming through my phone. I was listening to a podcast. God. And that would come through like every, X number of minutes. And I'm thinking, is this river behind me to the side going to like sweep me downstream? And that's how this happened. That's how I end, So that was pretty scary. So happy to survive that one as well. There's a lot so that one was more scary than like amazing, but it felt amazing to survive it. I'll just put it like that.
I mean, that's crazy to think that there are elements, completely outside of your control. Of course, 100 milers, you never know. They always say you run 100 miles, you never know what could happen. We've experienced it and all that. But there's so many elements outside of your control, whether it's hot, whether it's humid, whether it's raining and flooding. Everything had to align for this to happen. And it's amazing, man. It's amazing that everything aligned. You got into the races. Everything aligned. You finished the races. Everything aligned. Nothing happened during the races to take you out. Like if a race was canceled, TNOA 100, for example, had lightning and thunder and flooding, and it was awful. And they had to cancel it. They had to pull runners. The lead runners, I think, were in the 70s. They weren't able to finish the 100 miles. Like the fact that didn't happen is amazing. Like it's just so. It's what an amazing adventure you probably had this year. We do have a couple of live questions. I want to get to those, but first I just wanted to ask this last question: is why the hell would you add UTMB and Tahoe 200 to this mix?
Those were definitely common questions in the chat room.
It's why add the extra elements into your calendar for logistics purposes, for body purposes? You're a monster.
Yeah. So before finalizing all the lotteries and knowing that I was actually in everything, we were planning for the year. And UTMB, so Tahoe's always on the radar. At this point, I'd say I'm in legacy mode with Candace and Destination Trails. Shout out. And so that's one that we'll probably do year after year, no matter what. If we can get that to work. The timing of UTMB was rough. I'll totally admit to that. I had maybe 12 days after Leadville. I was really sick at Leadville. I couldn't stop coughing at Leadville. I think it just came from a chest cold. And people who were around me were like, how can you even like move? Because I was hacking like every step. Apologies for my team who are helping to pace me out there. That must not have been very fun to listen to.
We've gotten lots of emails during the show about how not fun you were to pace. So we'll forward those on to you.
Thank you. Yeah, Jackie in particular, sorry about that. And so, yeah, UTMB is my favorite course in the world. Like I love Chamonix. I love Italy. I love Switzerland. I love everything about, that area, that part of the world. And I was really excited because they offer the special thing where you can sign up for any of the races with someone else. And last time I did UTMB, I did it in 2016, and it was super thankful to be able to do that. But my wife Jenny wasn't able to, and it's a race where there's no pacing allowed. So it was really neat for us to sign up together as a couple, and we did that for a couple of years. And she would sign up for the OCC and try to do that race, and then I would sign up for UTMB, and finally, our ticket got pulled. And so we're like, we're going to try to do that. And again, that was a little bit before I think we had everything else lined up. Otherwise we would not have wanted it all to, not to sound ungrateful at all, because, that's definitely not the case. But if we were to be able to choose to do them all in 1 year versus not, we would have divvied those out to maybe a different time. And UTMB, Wasatch, Tahoe, was pretty rough. I was really nervous going into Tahoe for sure. I felt really worn down and beat up, like you can imagine, after those two, and but managed to squeak through that one also. So.
I mean, it's a testament to your strength, man. It's a testament to not just physically. Obviously, you've been training at this for years. You talk about your run streak being nearly 10 years long. You have the miles in your legs and your body, but it's also the mental fortitude. And that's kind of what I was mentioning earlier on in the show, is your ability to stay strict to your regime of running 2 miles a day for the last nearly 10 years is a testament to your ability to push through when things aren't always perfect. You're talking about the days you didn't want to do your run streak. You're talking about probably lots of days during your last 10 years where you didn't want to do your run streak, but you did. And you're entering these 100-milers and you're putting a lot of them back to back in a very tight time frame. Your body is tired, your mind is tired, but you got through it. So I just wanted to take this moment, man, to shout you out, because it's not easy to run 100 miles, despite what Carl Meltzer says and a lot of other people say, where 100 miles is not that hard. It is, and it's not normal. But you just managed to crush 8 plus an additional 2. We got to figure out a name. It's got to be like the terrible 10 or something like that. But the Nakamura 10, that's what it is, because I don't think anyone else on Earth have done it. I don't think
it's going to happen again. Yeah.
Right. The impossible Nakamura 10 is what it is, because see if another human can do it. But I just wanted to take a second, man, to really just shout you out, because you really are a testament to the sport. You're a fantastic ambassador. I always see you smiling, whether it's in person, whether we're running the same race, or on social media. Like every photo, you're smiling. You're thanking the volunteers. You're doing great things for the races themselves. You're a fantastic ambassador, and you are going to inspire a lot of people just either viewing or listening to this. Maybe they're going to start their own run streak. Maybe I'm going to start my own pie eating streak.
I like that. That means there'll be pie in the house every day.
Pizza and or fruit. I'll take it.
I'm liking all of those ideas. Thank you so much, Ethan and Kim. Thank you for the high five at Lake Sonoma. I definitely remember getting one of those from you while I was out there doing a training race, essentially. So and all the everything you guys contribute to the community is like just incredible. So thank you. Shout out back.
Dude, no, we're going to be taking a lot of what you've done this year and just being like, if Shawn can do 10, I can do 1, that sort of thing. And just keep doing it. Keep doing what you're doing. I don't anticipate you stopping. You seem to have been doing it for a long time now. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon, but continue to be who you are, because it's so good for the sport. And there are going to be so many people that look up to you and want to learn from you and stuff like that. But I want to get to at least one last live question before we move into our after show. Go ahead.
We also have the quickie question quiz.
Oh, I know.
Oh, okay. Just making sure that you didn't forget.
No, we put that towards the end with the GR crew member.
Let's see here. A history question here. Kevin in the chat room wants to know what and when was your first ultra?
Leona Divide, 2013. And I remember seeing Ethan out there. I think we finished about a minute or two apart. And you
The
were
50
doing a
miler?
video, the 50 miler.
Oh my God, that was your first
It
ultra?
was my first ultra. It was like 100 degrees. Like it was crazy. I've
Yeah.
been following you for tips on different gear, for like marathoning and everything like that. And to see you out there, you had the camera in hand, and that was a really cool moment. Like I was like, oh my gosh, that's the ginger runner. And we just finished this race, and I didn't know anything about ultra marathons. I didn't know anything about the trail and mountain community, or I literally knew zero. I didn't realize it was even a Western States qualifier.
Yeah.
I mean, that was when a 50 miler was still like a Western States qualifier. And someone was like, I'm eating one of those Subways, one of those famous Subway sandwiches that Kira Henninger likes to put out after her races. And shout out to Kira. And someone was like, "Oh, you did great. It was like 11 hours and I
We
don't
have
know,
the results right here, 11:07.
There we go. And they're like, you almost qualified for Western States. That person gets credit for even putting that as a idea in my head. I didn't even know what Western States was. I was
That's
like
amazing.
oblivious. So yeah, shout out to you for crushing that one as well. I think that was one of your first, or
That was my first 50 miler, and
First
it
50 mile.
was, I mean, I was
Melting.
temperature shock for the next 24 hours.
We almost went to the hospital that night.
Yeah, because my body hadn't acclimated. Like the heat was so bad at night, I couldn't get cool, and then I couldn't get warm, and it went back like that for like hours and hours. And we were debating going to the hospital because it was my temperature regulation was so off. You finished like 2 minutes ahead of me, and I also didn't realize it was a Western States qualifier until maybe halfway through at the turnaround. Someone's like, "Okay, you got to go. Like, if you get under 11 hours, you can qualify for Western State." Because I think that was one of the few 50 milers that was a qualifier back then, right?
Yeah.
We missed it by a few minutes.
No, it's so close.
So close. That's crazy. I had no idea that you ran that race. That was also the same race. No, that was a different one that Rob Krar won.
It was the Rob Krar race.
Was it the Rob Krar race?
It was, yeah. I remember seeing him come through, and I'm like, oh, the 50K runner is really fast. And he was running, because out and back course at the time, and he was running the 50 miler. Just a beast.
Yeah, you're like, wow, God, he's already done with 30 miles. Wow, that's crazy. I'm at 25. He's pretty fast. No, he's done with 50. He's done with all of it. Yeah, bonkers. Amazing side story. I had no idea about that. So yeah, shout out to 2013. You've obviously done a lot more since then than I have as far as hundreds is concerned. But that's, again, just a testament to your ability to like get it done. It's astounding. So yeah, as Kim mentioned, oh wait, Kim's pointing out you're signed up for a couple of things in the coming months, including Big's Backyard Ultra. Are you going to go to Big's?
It's currently planned to go to Big's right now. So if I can get my body to move at a reasonable speed, I will be towing the line out there.
That's amazing. And Courtney DeWalter and everyone that's going to be there, they better watch their back, because Shawn's going to be going and going and going.
Courtney's awesome. We chatted a little bit about it last year. She was like, "Oh, you should go run Big's," and didn't work. And I had committed to the Moab 240, and it was just, I think, back-to-back weekends. So I was like, okay, I'll try it another year. And so put my name in, and we'll see how that goes.
This will be an interesting test, because I bet that's kind of one of the things that you haven't really got to experiment with, is just to see how far can you go. Like, give yourself these sort of parameters and just go until you can't. That'll be fascinating to see how far Shawn Nakamura can run.
I'm hoping it's a test of will and not a physical test for me.
Absolutely.
Because I think that I can excel, compete there if that's the case, and if my body will hold up, then that could be quote unquote fun.
Let this be a moment that you hold at Big's Backyard. you can compete there, and you will. Like, trust me, as someone who knows your history and knows what you're capable of, just purely from a standpoint of statistics and knowing who you are as a human, you're going to do great things there. It's going to be really cool to watch. This just added a whole new element of like, oh man, this is great. That's coming up in a few weeks. So as Kim mentioned, we do have a segment on the show for all of our first-time guests called the Quickie Question Quiz. I know you're familiar with it. Kim's familiar with it. I'm familiar with it.
I've never heard of it.
Never heard of it?
No.
But for those who are unfamiliar, it's a series of rapid-fire questions for our guest. It's a short list of very easy questions the guest just has to answer with the first thing that comes to their mind. Shawn, when you are ready, give me the old thumbs up, and we'll just rip through the Quickie Question Quiz.
Let's do it.
Sweet. What was your very first race?
1 mile turkey trot at 6th grade, Sinaloa Middle School.
That was
Sixth
also
grade.
a Western States qualifier, by the way. Favorite place to run currently?
Treadmill at home. Outside of that, anywhere near home is good right now. We've been traveling so much.
I can only imagine, man. Road or trails?
Trails.
Bucket list race?
TDG, Hard Rock, Diagonal de Fou.
Oof, the old Jungle 100. Ooh, that one's going to be nasty. Favorite running movie?
2-part answer. Both related to Barkley. The Race That Eats Its Young, Barkley Marathons, and Where Dreams Go to Die.
I've heard of that one. I heard it's really good.
It's really good.
I heard it's really good. Almost nominated for an Academy Award.
Admittedly, have literally watched those dozens and dozens of times, for sure.
Awesome. I'm excited about this one. Guilty pleasure TV show. You have a lot of time on the treadmill. What do you go?
Yeah.
What's your go-to watch?
Hawaii Five-0, Guilty Pleasure TV.
The new one or the old one?
The new one. The old one is great. I used to watch that as a kid, reruns on TV. And then The Blacklist. Those have been recent ones. So
Favorite pre-race meal?
Pizza, veggie pizza. We're vegan, so no cheese or dairy-free cheese. I'm not as big a fan of that. I like the just sauce.
Sweet. Favorite post-race food? What do you go to? What's your go-to brand?
Veggie burger and fries. Hot, delicious fries.
And finally, Shawn, what are your current running kicks, or what did you run in for 8 100-mile races plus an additional 200?
I wore over a dozen of the Ultra Timp 1.5s, and those are my favorite trail shoes right now. And I'm excited to, when the 2s come out, for the road, I love the Escalante Racer, in particular 2019 versions. And I run a ton of those for a lot of road or treadmill type workouts.
Sweet. Shawn, congratulations. You passed the Quickie Question Quiz. So before we let you go, actually, before we move into the after show, so Shawn will join us for a little bit of the after show. You have time, Shawn? You have like some minutes for the after show?
10 minutes or so.
Sweet. So before we move into the after show, which is again for our Patreon subscribers, Shawn, can you let people know where they can find you on social media, where they can follow up with what's going to happen at Biggs, another race that you have coming up, and where can they find you?
ultrarunner SD as in San Diego, for Instagram, or you could do Twitter, but I'm pretty much on Instagram. You can also friend me on Facebook. Just search for Shawn Nakamura. Yeah.
Awesome. Do it. You guys know the drill. Go thank Shawn for being on the show. That was a hard sentence to say. Go thank Shawn for being on the show. Thank him for all that he does, because I'm going to be taking a lot of what he does and using it in my own mind, getting through some of these long runs and races and stuff like that. If you'd like to join us in the after show, go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, you get to support everything we do here, and you get cool perks, including having access to all of our after shows live and archived. It's a fraction of a cup of coffee a month, and it helps everything that we do here. And we love having new members to the community. And I'm going to say it now. We're going to talk a little bit about it this week with our Patreon crew, but we're going to release new Patreon crew merch. It's like t-shirts and hats and all sorts of really good stuff. We're very excited about it. We're going to be talking about that on the live stream later this week with everybody. So
And it looks super cool.
it looks super cool. Now's the time to join the crew if you have not already. Before we end our live show, though, we have a new segment that we like to call GR Crew Member of the Week, where we get to recognize a member of the community, the viewing audience, who's done something amazing, above and beyond, broken through their own walls, and we like to recognize them here on the show. Kim, who is our GR Crew Member of the Week?
This week's GR Crew Member of the Week is actually two people.
Sweet.
GR Crew Members of the Week are Peach Villacarlos and Randy Cafaro, who both volunteered together at the Grass Valley Aid Station, the Dick Collins Fire Trail 100K 50-miler marathon this weekend in Oakland.
Sweet.
And so it was really cool to see two different GR Crew members coming together to volunteer at an event together.
That's awesome. Congratulations, Peach and Randy, longtime viewers and supporters. They've been around since, the beginning. It's awesome to see members of the community give back. We've seen a lot more of it.
And together
too, which is so great. So big shout out to both of them. Congratulations on being GR Crew Members of the Week. We're going to move right into the after show here. We'll see you on over there. Otherwise, get out there, train hard, race harder, and party the hardest. Am I forgetting anything? GR this weekend.
GR.
Ginger Runner Global Run is this weekend. It's take place on Saturday. If you haven't registered, rungrgr.com. Consider it. We've got a lot of people participating. We're going to talk a lot about it in the after show and this week. Very excited about it. It's the 4th annual. If you don't know what it is, you probably haven't even made it this far into the show. If you are, I'm so surprised. Go check it out. rungrgr.com. Otherwise, that's it. Get out there, train hard, race hard, part of the hardest. I know I am. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.